Here's a question worth asking before we get into the rest of this video. Why is the United States blueberry industry worth over $1 billion annually when a closely related berry crop produces double the yield per plant, fruits 2 years sooner, grows in 10 times the range of soils, requires no fertilizer, resists nearly every common pest and disease, and contains higher levels of the antioxidants that blueberries are marketed for? The answer involves cooking, and one specific cultural decision made in the early 20th century that has shaped what Americans eat for the past 100 years. If you are new here, subscribe. The plant is elderberry, a large native shrub in the genus Sambucus, producing flat-topped clusters of white flowers in late spring and dense clusters of small dark purple berries in late summer. The most commercially significant species are Sambucus nigra, the European black elder, and Sambucus canadensis, the American elder. Both species are nutritionally similar. Both produce abundant fruit on minimal inputs. Both have been used as food and medicine across multiple continents for at least 2,000 years. The Greek physician Hippocrates, writing in roughly 400 BC, reportedly called the elder his medicine chest. The Roman natural historian Pliny the Elder included elderberry in his natural history in the 1st century AD. European folk medicine prescribed elderberry preparations through the entire medieval period and into modern times. Native American communities, including the Cherokee, the Iroquois, and tribes across the Pacific Northwest, used native elderberry species for food, medicine, and crafts. The Lakota name for the plant translates roughly as the medicine tree. In rural Appalachia, elderberry wine, elderberry syrup, and elderflower cordial were standard household products well into the 20th century. Now to the comparison the title of this video promises. A mature blueberry bush in optimal conditions produces between 5 and 10 pounds of fruit per year. A mature elderberry bush in similar conditions produces between 12 and 15 pounds per year. A blueberry plant requires 3 to 4 years from planting to reach productive harvest. An elderberry plant typically produces meaningful fruit in year 2 and reaches full production in year 3. Blueberries require specific acidic soil with pH between 4.5 and 5.5. In most American soils, this means substantial amendment with sulfur, peat, and ongoing maintenance to keep the soil acidic enough for the plants to thrive. Elderberries tolerate soil pH from 5.5 to 7.0, a range that covers most untreated soils across North America without any amendment at all. Blueberries require regular fertilization, careful pruning, netting against birds, treatment against multiple fungal and bacterial diseases, and constant attention to soil moisture. Elderberries require minimal pruning, no fertilizer, in moderately fertile soil, have few significant pests or diseases, and tolerate both drought and flooding once established. By every objective agricultural measure that matters to a home grower, elderberry outperforms blueberry decisively. So why is one a multi-billion-dollar industry and the other a backyard curiosity? The answer involves a specific limitation that turns out to be the entire story. You cannot eat raw elderberries. That sentence, in its full implications, explains nearly everything about why elderberry is missing from American grocery stores. Raw elderberries contain cyanogenic glycosides, compounds that release small amounts of hydrocyanic acid when the plant tissue is crushed or chewed. The leaves, stems, roots, and unripe berries contain substantially higher concentrations of these compounds. The fully ripe purple-black berries contain much less, but still enough that raw consumption typically produces nausea, vomiting, and digestive distress within hours. This is not a minor culinary inconvenience. It is a fundamental practical limit on how elderberry can be brought to market. Blueberries are picked, packaged, shipped, and eaten immediately. The supply chain works because consumers can eat the fruit raw straight from the container. Elderberries require cooking to neutralize the cyanogenic compounds. The application of heat at roughly 70 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes destroys the toxic compounds completely. After cooking, elderberries are safe to eat and have been consumed safely across multiple civilizations for thousands of years. But the requirement for processing means elderberries cannot follow the same commercial path as blueberries. A fresh elderberry sitting in a grocery store produce section is not a product American consumers know how to use. A fresh blueberry sitting in the same section is. That single difference, amplified across 100 years of food industry evolution, explains why one berry is everywhere and the other is invisible. Subscribe if you want more of these stories. The shift happened during a specific window of American history. Through the 19th century, elderberry was a household ingredient across rural America. Cookbooks of the era include recipes for elderberry jam, jelly, syrup, pie, wine, and cordial. Pharmacies sold elderberry preparations for coughs, colds, and digestive complaints. The crop was abundant enough that commercial elderberry harvesting was a small but real American industry. Then the supermarket model emerged. Between roughly 1920 and 1960, American food retail consolidated around standardized national distribution of products that required minimal preparation by the consumer. The industry that emerged favored crops that could be picked, packed, shipped, and sold without processing infrastructure. Blueberries fit this model perfectly. Elderberries did not. By 1960, elderberry had largely retreated from mainstream American food culture into a niche occupied by traditional medicine practitioners, home herbalists, and rural communities maintaining older food traditions. What is unusual is what was lost in the transition. The medicinal research on elderberry has accelerated significantly over the past 3 decades, and the findings consistently support traditional uses. The most consistent area of research involves upper respiratory infections. A 2019 meta-analysis published in the journal Complementary Therapies in Medicine by Hawkins and colleagues synthesized data from 4 randomized controlled trials of elderberry extract versus placebo for upper respiratory infections. The pooled analysis found that elderberry consumption was associated with reduced duration and reduced severity of upper respiratory symptoms. The effect appeared larger for influenza-like illness than for general cold symptoms. This is consistent with earlier studies, including a 2004 trial published in the Journal of International Medical Research that documented faster recovery from influenza in patients who received elderberry syrup compared to placebo. The proposed mechanism involves specific anthocyanins that appear to inhibit viral replication by binding to viral surface proteins and preventing entry into human cells. Laboratory studies have documented this antiviral activity against multiple strains of influenza and several other respiratory viruses. It is important to be precise about what this research does and does not establish. The trials are small, the methodology varies, and elderberry is not a replacement for vaccination or for medical treatment of serious infections. But the evidence base is real and consistent enough that the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health considers elderberry a candidate for further serious clinical research. Beyond respiratory effects, the antioxidant research is more straightforward. Elderberry contains some of the highest concentrations of anthocyanins documented in any temperate fruit: cyanidin-3 glucoside, cyanidin-3 sambubioside, and several related pigment compounds that give the berries their deep purple-black color. A 2014 review in the journal Trends in Food Science and Technology documented total phenolic content in Sambucus nigra berries at levels comparable to or exceeding chokeberry and bilberry, both of which are widely marketed as premium superfoods. Specific phenolic compounds in elderberry include rutin, quercetin, gallic acid, and gentisic acid. The mineral profile includes notable amounts of potassium, phosphorus, and iron. The vitamin profile includes vitamin A, vitamin C, and several B-complex vitamins. The flavonoid content, particularly in Sambucus nigra flowers, includes some of the highest documented concentrations of rutin in any common edible plant. For someone who has been buying blueberries primarily for their antioxidant content, elderberry delivers substantially higher concentrations of the same general class of compounds at a fraction of the cultivation cost, provided you cook them. The practical reality of using elderberry is straightforward once you accept the cooking requirement. For growing, elderberry is one of the easiest perennial fruit shrubs available to a home gardener. Plant in spring after the last frost or in late autumn before the ground freezes. Space plants 6 to 10 feet apart. Provide full sun for best fruit production, though the shrub tolerates partial shade. Pollination is improved by planting at least 2 different cultivars within 60 feet of each other. Some cultivars are partially self-fruitful, but yields increase substantially with cross-pollination. Popular American cultivars include Adams, Johns, Bob Gordon, and Wilderwood. Popular European cultivars include Hashberg, Sambo, and Corsair. For the first 2 years, let the plant establish without significant pruning. After year 2, prune in late winter to remove damaged canes and to maintain about 5 to 8 productive canes per mature shrub. Most fruit is produced on 1 and 2-year-old wood, so renewal pruning maintains productive structure long term. Harvest occurs in late summer through early autumn, typically July through September depending on cultivar and climate. Cut entire flat clusters with kitchen scissors when berries are fully purple-black, slightly soft to gentle pressure, and easily detached from their stems. A pillowcase or large basket works well for transport. Remove individual berries from cluster stems before processing. This is the most labor-intensive step. One common method is to freeze the entire clusters briefly, which makes the berries snap off easily when shaken in a bowl. Now the safety section, because this is where most beginner foragers get into trouble. Never eat raw elderberries. Even small amounts of raw, fully ripe berries can produce digestive distress in many people. Larger amounts can produce significant illness requiring hospital treatment. This is not a marketing exaggeration. It is a documented chemical property of the plant. The compounds responsible are completely destroyed by heat. Boil the berries in water for 10 minutes or longer at temperatures above 70 degrees Celsius. After cooking, elderberries are safe. The traditional preparations include syrup made from cooked berries reduced with honey or sugar, jam made from cooked berries with pectin and sugar, wine made through controlled fermentation that destroys the cyanogenic compounds, pie filling and cobblers using cooked berries, tea made from cooked berries dried and steeped. Elderflower preparations, including the famous French cordial de sureau, use only the flowers, which contain substantially lower concentrations of the toxic compounds and can be used in lightly heated preparations safely. 2 important additional cautions. First, red elderberry species, including Sambucus racemosa and Sambucus pubens, are generally considered toxic even when cooked. Stick to the purple-black berried species, Sambucus nigra, Sambucus canadensis, and Sambucus cerulea, Pacific Northwest blue elder. The blue elder has a distinctive whitish bloom on the berries, but is the same general edibility category as the black-fruited species. Second, the leaves, stems, roots, and bark of all elderberry species contain substantially higher concentrations of toxic compounds than the berries. Never include any green plant material in elderberry preparations. Strip the berries from their stems carefully before cooking and discard all leaves, stems, and unripe green berries. For purchasing, dried elderberries are available from herbalist suppliers, health food stores, and online retailers, typically priced between $20 and $40 per pound. This is expensive compared to fresh blueberries, but reasonable when you consider that 1 pound of dried elderberries yields the equivalent of several pounds of fresh berries after rehydration and cooking. For long-term storage, homemade elderberry syrup keeps in the refrigerator for 6 to 8 weeks, or in the freezer for a year or more. A single mature shrub can produce enough berries to keep a household in elderberry syrup, jam, and tea preparations for an entire winter. What you have when you grow your own elderberries and learn to process them safely is a fruit that has been a staple of European, Asian, and Native American food and medicine for over 2,000 years, with peer-reviewed clinical evidence supporting its use for respiratory illness, higher antioxidant content than the commercial berry that displaced it, double the yield per plant, 2 years faster to fruit, and a fraction of the maintenance. The cooking requirement is the entire reason the plant is not in your grocery store. It is also the reason a 15-minute kitchen step gives you access to a fruit the American food industry has functionally forgotten. If you have a sunny corner of yard, 1 elderberry shrub planted this spring will produce harvestable fruit by next summer. Subscribe if you want more videos on the specific plants that the supermarket model of American food quietly pushed off your plate.